My hat! Now this is my SCT 410.3 manual, and this manual actually comes with these setup sheets, blank. You can just fill them in. So for example here, this one here has some of the stock information. If you make changes, you have this other page right here, and then you know, you can write the date, event, whatever it is on there. And if your manual did not come with it, such as my EB410.2, I did not see the pages in there when I first assembled it, so I just put the manual away, never used it. Well, I have used it, but that's a different story. Just keep a notebook. So this is my EB410.2. Now, somebody had asked me, I believe it was a month ago, as of this video, about setup sheets, if I had setup sheets on my EB410.2. Now, I had not driven this in a really long time, and I finally got to drive it in a track. It was quite a drive, but I really like the track. Owner's great too. But this is my setup sheets. So I'm going to go over how I do these. Now, you already saw I generally scribble and do random notes on the left, and then everything that I generally said I'll put here on the right. So first thing that I have is I have my blocks. So I have my A block, B block, C block, D block. Now really quick, this block here, this aluminum block here, this is the A block. The block back here, the other aluminum block, you can probably put it off this way. That's the C block, sorry, B block. C block, well, you can only see the square, so it's in there. And then D block would be the last one. So just think of 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D. That's all they mean. So now these little figures there, so if you look at the blocks, you can't really see that one, but you can see this over here. You see that little dot there, right here. So these little pills, you can pop these out, pop different ones in, and that will change different characteristics. For example, your anti-squat, your kick-up, all that good stuff. And what I do is I just write the block, A, B, C, D. And then below it, I just draw these little pictures where that little dot goes. So you cannot see because of the bumper, but here they would be bottom all the way to the right, sorry, all the way to the outside. So bottom all the way to the outside. And I know it's all the way because I wrote a 1. So if I had written a 0, it means center, right, toward the center line, or the center, whichever way I'm going. Because I wrote a 1, I know it's all the way to the extreme. If I had written a 0.5, then it would have been closer. So let's see one that you can see. So that's a 1, and then 0.5 would have been a little closer in, and then 0 would have been toward the center. So let's just say if I had something like this, and it was a 0.5, it means it would have been right here. Or if I had something here in the center, 0.5, it would have been just slightly in. That's the way I mark them. So that's what the 1 represents. It's all the way to the outside, 0, center. Now, my B block, that's right smack in the center. Now my C block, so you can see it's center all the way to the top. That's why it gets the 1. That way I don't get confused and I don't look at this. Oh, is that supposed to be a point? Is that somewhere in the middle or all the way to the edge? It's a 0.5. Sorry, it's a 1. And to be honest, you don't even have to do that. Another way of doing it could be you put a dot there, and then you could put a triangle, and then you could put a circle, you know, triangle further in, circle all the way out, or just put the dot on the outside of the line, and that means it's a 1 or inside, you know, whatever you want. Come up with your own, whatever's easiest for you. If you can come up with your own method and it's easier for you, go for it. Now, let's see, so that's what I have there. That's what these mean. So the D block, if you look at the D blocks, see, center all the way to the bottom. That's why there's a 1. So it's center all the way to the bottom. I'm not running these. I decided to settle with these. This was better. I kept going, like, do I want these? Do I want those? I ended up going with these. All right, so let's see. Now, Camber Links. So Camber Links, -2 degrees. Okay, so -2 means they're inward. You can't really tell because it took a wheel off. But that means that the wheel is going to be like this. So that's negative, this is positive. So it's -2 in the rear, -0.5 in the front. So the front is almost straight up and down. And that seems to work. I may play with it later on, but there's other adjustments first that I need to tweak before I come back to this. Now the setup that I'm going to show you worked fine. I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking of changing later and then why. And one of them's coming up actually. So Camber Links, so that's what these two numbers mean in parentheses, so rear and front. Again, I generally, well, actually I don't think I've said it, but I orient the car this way. So left to right going rear to front. Think of a plane, so a coordinate plane. Now this is turned a little. So think of a coordinate plane, right? That's why. So negative, positive. So I go left to right, I'm moving this way. So rear to front, that's the reason why I don't do front to rear, it's rear to front. Now, this number 3, if you look at this part back here, for example, on an EB410, you have 5 positions. You can't really see because of the light, a little better. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3 happens to be in the middle. That's where I have it. Happens to be stock. Works for me right now. So it's a 3 and a D. D refers to this point here. Now on some vehicles, such as the EB410.2, you can remove this piece in here. There's these little pills in there. So you can see one of the holes. There's another hole here. You can remove them and flip them. So then you would get your A. The A would be right over here versus here this is the D. So D, it's all the way to the outside. A would be all the way to the inside. And then B and C would be in the middle. So you can flip these. So right now I'm running D, 3D, 3D. And it's working fine. I don't really see a reason to change it. It actually ran quite well. Let's see, and when I say it ran quite well, I mean I was able to put consistent laps. If I wasn't, that'd be a different story. If ever any of my laps were not consistent, I knew why. I knew where I screwed up. So half the time it's the driver, not the car. Most of the time it's the driver, not the car. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Half the time it's the driver, the other half it's the tires. Now the front, so it's on 2A. So again, top hole is 1, and then the next one is 2. And then it's A, B. So A is the inside, B. This is what I'm planning on changing. Now usually I just put a line under what I want to change. I accidentally wrote a line all the way. That's why you see the second line. But usually it would just be the short line because all I want to change is A. So I'm going to run it like this next time I go out. And then I'm going to move this over to B and see how it works. And the reason why I want to go over to B is I want to slow down the roll center. That's the reason why. I'll see if it works. If I like it, I'll leave it at B. If not, I'll bring it back. Yeah, that's what I'm going to end up doing. So I'm going to end up measuring this, go to B, just in case I go back to A. I can just quickly go to that. It'll make it easier. So this, I'm going to try it out. If not, I'm going to go to B. Great. Steering. So we have toe. So toe, I have toe in, 1 degree. I may go to 0, I may go to toe out. I'm going to play with it. So I'm going to start with 1 degree and then start going out. So I'll go 1 degree, 0, and then 1 out. I really don't think I need steering, but I'm still going to do it just in case. I mean, like I said, carpet, really high traction, but the course was quite technical. So I'm going to see if I need to just maybe steer a little more. I have no idea, to be honest. I think it's fine, but we'll see. So, which I should put this, and actually it's a positive one, so it's out. Let me look at the car. Yep, I have toe out. So toe out 1 degree, so I can take off steering, go down, or I can add steering, go 2. So I think it's fine. I'm probably not going to move it. I regret putting that line on there. I'll leave it. I'll worry about it later. And then I'll tell you what I do usually with the lines. So I'll do a little line going down, meaning reduce the number, or I'll do a line going up over here, meaning go up on the number. But so far, let's see, toe 1 degree. And I don't know why I wrote in. This was the mistake. See, I started copying in and out. I used to just do positive and negative, and that used to be a lot easier. But, you know, people kept asking me, is it toe in or toe out? Well, there we go. So it's toe out 1 degree. Now, this here, so this actually means center, it doesn't mean clockwise. So this means center washer, outer washer. I'll just put washer. And if you look at the center here of the steering, because we're looking at the steering, I have these washers here. So I'm running 4 washers. And I'm running 4 washers, so I'm running the same washers. Now on the outer, over here, I'm only running 2 washers, so outer washer, I'm running 2. So I'm running 2 washers in there. And like I said, that seems to work fine. It's really just, you know, like I said, if whatever laps weren't consistent, wasn't the car, it was the driver, I knew exactly what I did wrong. Now the wing I have a 5mm and 7. So 5mm, that's the spacer, it's a 5mm spacer. And 7, there's these little dimples in here. There's 7 of them, so if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it's all the way to the rear. I may play with it and change it, but I don't know. It's fine for now. I want to work on other things first. So setting up a car, doing too many changes at one is a bad mistake. Just do 1 change, get comfortable with it, decide whether it was good or bad, and then, you know, move on from there. Then you can try looking at other things. I'll probably end up doing some setup videos or how to set up just basic things on a car in the future. Not the near future, but in the future. Well, depends on when you see this this video. Maybe by the time you see it, they will be made. Except for those of you that are going to see it as soon as it comes out. But let's see. So we have that. That's what these refer to, the washers. Now, the wing, I spoke about that. The pinion and spur. So this is pinion and spur. And I always go back and forth between whether to do pinion and spur or spur and pinion. A lot of people will ask me about my pinion and spur. I actually like talking about spur and pinion because the spur gets divided by the pinion. But whatever. It doesn't matter as long as you know what corresponds, you know, what value corresponds to which. So right now, this is the pinion and that's the spur. And I'm going to be playing with these probably, actually this one, later on. And it is a 48 pitch. And that's just a note. Now, is it this other side? Yes. I actually started on the 2nd page. So let's go now to this one over here. So let's see, the rear hubs. So if you look at the rear hubs, if you look at the height, I would have to remove this for you to see, but the height is adjustable. So 1 is all the way at the bottom. So then the pin can go here on the lower part. So it's 1 and then 2, 3. It just goes up. So 1, 2, 3. I on the lowest setting. So that's a 1. That's where the number 1 comes from. So that refers to this here. Now sway bars. Sway bars, the rear, I'm going to go down. That's what this means. So I'm going to try a 1.9 and then I'm going to go down. I ran the 1.9. It did fine. But I think what made the change was actually the front. So the front video, it was, I believe, a 1.4. And then I ended up buying the kit, which has the 1.5 all the way to 1.9. And the 1.9 did great. The problem that I was having before is whenever I would turn, so I'd be going at a higher speed, or even not even that fast, to be honest, the inside rear wheel would lift off the ground significantly. So since I added this 1.9 sway bar in the front, it stopped doing that, which was great. Sometimes it still lifts off, but not that much. That's the reason why I want to try going with a lighter rear sway bar, just to allow it. But then again, I'm not running, my rear arms are flat, so there's no droop. I mean, well, technically there's always some droop, and I will tell you what I mean. Which brings us up here. So the height and droop. I do not actually measure the height of the front and rear. Many of you are probably going to be watching this and will probably say that I should. And I understand why I should. I just don't. And I'm going to tell you why I do not. I take the difference between the front and the rear height, and I just mark the difference. So that I do have. Now, if I have a +1, so if it's a positive number, the front is higher than the rear. If I have a negative number, the rear is higher than the front. And the reason why I'm running a millimeter higher in the front, so this is once I set the car, right, place it down, is so that when I brake and the car sort of nosedives, it doesn't nosedive too much because it's carpet. That's the reason why. I don't want it to go too far forward. So I want to start up a little higher and then I brake so it kind of levels out, maybe goes a little into the negative. That's the only reason why. It's to try to control the diving so that it helps me not traction roll. To be honest, I didn't traction roll much. The only times that I traction rolled were my fault, and I'm going to tell you what I was doing wrong. And every time, I mean, I already knew before it traction rolled, I already knew, oh, I'm going to traction roll. But it was a matter of like a second or a split second, really. But I'm going to tell you later on what to do, because sometimes it's one's driving, but it's very easy to blame the car and blame the setup when in reality, you know, we need to learn how to drive. So I'm going to talk about that later on. All right, wheelbase. So now wheelbase, rear and front. +1 millimeter, -1 millimeter. What this means is this is telling me that at the rear of the car, I added a 1 millimeter spacer to the front. So if you look at this, I can't really see. Anyway, there's a spacer in here in the front. There's no spacer in the rear. So I have a spacer in the front. In the front of the vehicle, so over here now, I have -1 millimeter. So this is my note saying that I have 1 millimeter spacer in the rear. So I have, oh, if I flip it, there we go. So I have my spacer in there, so the rear. That's the way I note the car. So I'm actually running a long wheelbase. That's what I'm doing. And that's what makes sense to me. Now, I am going to change the way I note this because, to be honest, it's way too much information in such a small place. But dampers. So we're looking at the shocks. What this tells me is the spring height. So I have the rear, I have the front. So if you just kind of divide this up and that. So the spring height in the rear is 6 millimeters. So that's this here, that's where the collar is. So it's 6 millimeter. That's how far I move the collar down. And I'm running pink springs, which are the softest springs that you can get. And the reason why I'm using the softer springs in the rear, and then some of you, please, if you're running different springs, maybe some with more tension in the rear on carpet, let me know what you're running and why you're running it. Some people are going to be interested. Now, the reason why I'm running the pink springs, which are light springs in the rear, is because when I hit the brakes and I brake, the spring is pushing down on your arm because it's lifting the car. So the reason why I went with a soft spring is because I don't want too strong of a spring to push my car up, because as you brake, the rear end is going to lift up and it's helping the spring push the car up. So that's why I went with a weaker spring, so that there's less compression force trying to decompress, and then pushes the car up with a greater force. That's the reason why. Versus if I went with a really heavy spring, hit the brake, I'll probably want to lift off further. So that's what I did. Now in the front, I am running, oh wait, let me just finish with the rear. Okay, so 6mm, I'm running pink springs, and here I'm running a 2-1. So 2-1, what that refers to is, if you look at the holes, right, maybe can you see them through this other side? Wind's kind of in the way. So it's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I'm running hole 2. So this is hole 2 on the top, hole 1 on the bottom. So that's what this means. So the damper is hole number 2. So going from the center line out, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm on 2, and then 1 on the bottom. So 2 on top, 1 on the bottom. And I'm running 45 weight oil here, and it is team associated, so generally I put in AE. That's the brand. And in the front, I'm running red springs, which are the stiffer ones that Tekno makes, or at least that I found. Maybe there's some ones with higher tension. I think these are rated at 3.85 inch-pounds. I believe they use inch-pounds as the unit. But if you know of something that's maybe closer to a 4, whatever that is, inch-pounds, let me know. Put it in the comments. I may be interested. Although it's not that soft, but I kind of wish it was a little stiffer, just in the front, and that's mainly for when I'm turning. And it's really to help me when I make mistakes, and I will tell you what those mistakes are later on. So red, and then I'm running a 1 and 2. So I'm running hole 1 on top, 2 on the bottom. So it's all the way to the inside, up top, all the way on the outside at the bottom. So it's 1/2, 1/2. That's what that means. Now the oil that I'm running in the front, this is 47.5 weight, also AE, AE meaning team associated. I'm not saying team associated is the best oil, but just be consistent. You know, if you buy, for example, I don't know, team associated oil or TLR oil or some other brand, it may be, I think Flush makes, that's another one. It may not be consistent brand to brand. That's the reason why. And I have no way of testing them and comparing them myself, so it's much easier to just kind of stick with one. Now the spring height, 0, so the collar is right at the line. That's what this means. So 0 in the front. And here we have the diff oil, and the diff oil I have 10,000, 30,000, 15,000. And that seems to be working quite well, actually. I may try 40 in the future, but first I want to test the other changes that I've already noted that I'm going to make. And then after I test those, then I'll probably consider going to a 40, see if I go to heavier oil. And then those are, like I said, notes that I make. So then I'll probably consider going into heavier oil. But for now, the changes that I'm going to consider, I'm not going to mess with that one. I don't think I need to. But I'm going to try this one. So I'm going to try making this longer, see how that feels. I don't think steering's going to be a problem. But this is my next one, and then my sway bar. as I mentioned. So sway bar, I'm going to try going lighter now in the rear and see how what changes that makes. Wait, where's the sway bar? Sway bar's over here. Yeah, sway bar, so I'm going to go down. I'll probably go down to 1.8, 1.7, and then kind of stop where I think, or maybe I'll go back to a 1.9. But that's what I'll end up doing. So that's my setup sheet, my current setup sheet for my Tekno EB410.2. Again, there are some changes I am planning on making in the future. So if you notice this line, see how this line goes like this and up. So after I run these changes, I am planning on possibly increasing, going to a 50 weight oil in the front shocks. So that's a possibility. So possible changes: 50 weight oil in the front shocks, 1.9, I'm going to go down to a 1.8 sway bar, and I'm going to do A to B. So the first thing that I'm going to do is drive the car as it is. Actually, I'm going to replace the oil, so go to a 50. This is current, but I'm going to go to 50. And then I'm going to run it again, and then I'm going to work with the sway bar. And I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do it in different instances. To be honest, I should work with this one first. So I'll do this one, AB, because it's easier to switch back and forth, and then I'll do the sway bars. Or maybe I'll do the sway bars and then I'll switch this out and try the sway bars again. And the reason why is because one change can be affected by a different. If you do a change to the front, it's going to affect the rear. If you do a change to the rear, it's going to affect the front of the vehicle. But that's that for my setup. Now, quick little thing, if you are running carpets, a few things, well, not really a few things, one very important thing. If you are new or just haven't gone out there in a long time, or you're traction rolling, one very important thing is to, as you're running, brake and then enter the turn. And the reason why is because if you brake as you're taking the turn, so as you're turning in, what will happen is as you brake, all the weight's going to go forward. But then if you add that turn, it's going to pivot your car and you are going to traction roll. And every time I traction rolled, I already knew I was going to, and the reason why is because I hit the brakes too late and I was going too fast. So I just kept the brakes on a little longer, and sometimes I just had to turn to avoid it, but sometimes I didn't take that wider turn, so I would just roll over. So that's a little recommendation there. So if you're traction rolling a lot, first pay attention to your driving before you start changing anything in your vehicle. And the reason why is sometimes it could be your driving, not the vehicle. So again, brake, and then as you enter the turn, just kind of roll into it. One of the things that I liked about this setup is when I did things right, I was hitting braking and then turning into the corner, and then about mid-corner just powering out. And I just like the way the car could just power out of the turn, because I'd rather power out of the turn than power in the turn and then have to slow down. You can't do that. You're going to traction roll, or I don't know how you would do that, to be honest. I have no clue, but you can leave a comment. So that's my recommendation. The other recommendation, especially if you just bought one of these cars and you're starting to race this for the first time, is when you're kind of going up the hills. So imagine this is the hill and you're going this way, right? This is the plane and you're going here. As you're going, this car is actually pretty heavy in the front, and the front stays pretty well planted. So as you go, I was generally the best times that I would have if I actually accelerated and kind of accelerate onto the mound or the jump. Sometimes my tires would actually come off a lot, and then I would land almost at the bottom or over here, and those were my slowest times. And I knew that we're going to be slow. It's just, you get too excited, you forget. But whenever I just accelerated and then just kind of coasted up this thing, because it carries enough speed, I would coast, I would come off just lightly, but I would land on the downside. And just before I landed on the downside, to be honest, I would just pull the trigger all the way through. My spur's still fine. I mean, sometimes you can destroy your spur, but because the car is already coming down because of gravity and it's at a slope, I would pull the trigger all the way and then the car would just hook, boom, take off. And those were generally my fastest laps. And to be honest, it can be a whole second difference just driving one way versus the other. Same exact car, same exact setup. And like I said, my times were generally very, very consistent with the vehicle. So I'm happy there. Was it consistent fast? I don't know. Was it consistent slow? Possibly. If it was consistent slow, that's probably just because I was the one driving it. But it was consistent. Now, being consistent is a matter of opinion. For me, being consistent was ignoring my fastest and ignoring my slowest, because that's going to happen. You're going to crash, you're going to do something, unless you're an expert. So for example, my fastest was a 19.4, but most of my times were actually close to 19.8, 19.7, 19.9. They were in that range, and then once in a while you'd get something over that depending on the crash, but most of my runs were within there. So my average was actually in the middle of most of my runs. It's not like I had times all over the place. So that was pretty good. Are there a lot of other really fast people? Oh yeah, of course. But I did swap out the motor as well, so we'll see how this one does. But anyway, that's going to be it for this here. So hopefully that gave you more information on how to read setup sheets, different people's setup sheets, and my setup sheets, or sheet that I just showed you, perfect, but I hope it helps for a base, and I hope that the changes that I'm planning on making help you as well to make changes, and I hope the explanations helped as well. So other than that, thank you so much for watching, and if you have any other questions, just go ahead and post your questions. I'll eventually try to get to you. And thank you so much for asking for my setup sheets. Have a good one. Until next time, be good.